Good morning, guys. In the last video, you saw that we removed our drivetrain from the Goblin. She looks a little sad. She's very dirty. I'm hoping to get in here and really clean it up. But as you can see, I took the transmission off. It's just 6 bolts. Not a huge deal. Didn't think it needed to be on camera. But today's goal is to take our 220,000 plus mile transmission and figure out, don't mind the pine needles, but to figure out what is causing a big mess in here. There's a ton of fluid leaking inside the bell housing. I know that there is a seal behind the slave cylinder, and I know that I nicked the threads on one of these bolts and I fixed it with a bit of JB weld. So we'll see how that works. Another thing I'm working on, this is our OEM wheel speed sensor. I wasn't able to use this originally, I thought, because it is a 2-wire. I don't know if you can, yeah, you can see it's a 2-wire magnetic sensor, which the fuel tech is not able to use a VR style sensor for our wheel speed, and it goes here, which is the differential gear. But as you can see, this is a Davies technology wheel speed sensor, like 120 bucks each. It's kind of a lot of money for just a simple sensor, melted from the exhaust. So I want to try to use that OEM setup again. But first, I am gonna clean this transmission up, get it off the floor, get it somewhere else that I could work on it, and we're gonna see what we could do about those seals. I'll be replacing this one, the one on the other side, and hopefully the seal behind our sled cylinder. Alright, so you saw me working in the sink here to clean up the transmission. Unfortunately, in the process, I cracked the sink, so that's going to have to be replaced, but not a big deal. I spent probably 2-3 hours cleaning up the transmission, so here we are. It's so dark in here. It's relatively clean. I took the wire wheel to it. I took a toothbrush to it and a lot of whatchamacallit, Simple Green. And we cleaned it up good. The big thing that I took transmission apart for was a big leak here in our bell housing, which I believe is from the throwout bearing, either the threads that I screwed up in here, or there's a seal on the back of the throwout bearing. So I used some Teflon tape. We'll see if that helps at all. And I replaced our seals for our input shaft or output shafts for our drive shafts. They look like this. This is one that I took out. It's relatively easy on the other side because there's this like star-shaped housing for it, which shims for the differential behind it. But on this side, I had to just take a screwdriver, jam it in the side without garring up the transmission case, pop it out, and then when you put them back in, let's see if I could find the light to show you. You can see it's got a little hump on it, and if you don't use something wide enough to go around this full ring, you'll flatten it, and that probably ruins it. So this is a brand new one that I screwed up in the process of putting it in. I did find I have this sleeve that you could expand and contract for putting pistons into an engine. I was able to tighten it down a bunch so it was right on this edge, and I wasn't worried about screwing up that tool because it's like $10 at Harbor Freight. So that's how I got my new seals in. Now the last thing we're going to work on is, oh, this is in there. This is our OEM wheel speed sensor. It is magnetic. It is a 2-wire VR sensor, and I have purchased a board from a company called SIRHC, which apparently can convert that 2-wire signal to a 3-wire square wave signal, which the Fuel Tech wants. Fuel Tech has their own converter, but it's like $200, and this board was $18, and I have a whole bunch of wiring supplies. So the next thing you're going to see is me wiring up that little board so we can get wheel speed directly from our transmission rather than from the Davies wheel speed sensor that goes to the drive shaft and bounces around a lot. So we will see how that works. I'll try it out and I will let you know if it works out well or not. So let's jump over to probably just a time lapse of me soldering wires and plugs onto this new board to work with our old sensor. Alright, so let's talk about this. Here you can see, this is our board. Not sure if you can read that. You can see that on one side it has a in and an out, positive and minus. That's for our sensor side, the VR sensor, which is just a magnetic sensor, so it's not powered. And then on our right side, you can see there's a power, ground, and then there's a signal out. In my wiring harnesses, I use white as my signal, black as ground, and then for 5 volts, I did use green on the car, but I seem to be out of the green. But here's our harness with just arbitrary lengths of wire. Next thing I need to do is throw the VR sensor plug on this end. But first I'm gonna heat shrink over this board so that nothing can ground out on it. I'm not sure how long I'm gonna make the wires. Probably gonna keep them longer. You could tuck it away pretty easily rather than have them be too short. Not sure where I'm gonna put this because you don't really want it to get damaged, but we'll figure that out in the meantime. So there's our plug. Got our pins in there. I reused this plug from the old harness that came off of the car because it's a stock sensor. Not a huge fan of how this shrink wrap. I'll probably wrap it in tape as well. But this other end, I have to decide what I'm going to do with. I'll probably just get rid of the plug that's on the Davies connector and just use one of these Delphi connectors. As you saw, we got that wheel speed sensor wired up. I don't have the car together enough to actually test it or anything, but our transmission saga is not completely over, but this is going to be the last thing I do for the video here. You could see, well, maybe you could see, let me pull out a flashlight here. You could see that the last time when I drove the car, the axle that broke slung up and it cracked the transmission case. We fixed this the day of using JB Weld, but from all the cleaning and using the wire brush, and I'm sure it wasn't totally clean, it got oily and the JB Weld came off. So we're doing the same thing. I picked up some of this JB Weld. I'm not going to bother filming that, but that's the last thing we do with the transmission. And then after that, I will figure out something else to work on with the car, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you for watching. If you liked it, maybe subscribe, share it with your friends. I'm trying to do something, and if there's any recommendations for the car, let me know. I'm thinking about doing Cerakote or some sort of ceramic coating for the exhaust, working on the brake system, lots of little things, but I don't have much time. It's the beginning of March, and the first autocross event is April 12th, so that's what we're getting ready for. I think I have plenty of time. There's not that much to do but clean up, really. So I'll see you in the next one.